Welcome to SBC This Week, a weekly roundup of news and events from across the Southern Baptist Convention, featuring interviews from today's top church leaders. I'm Brandon Porter. Laura Erlandson is here with me. How are you, Laura?
I'm good. I'm good.
Very
Glad to
good.
be back home in Tennessee.
Well,
Yeah.
where have you been?
I have been in Texas.
Mm,
I have remembered the Alamo this
mhm.
week because I couldn't miss it. It was literally right next door to my hotel.
Yeah, there you
You
go.
walk out of and I was talking to my husband and I said, my hotel is really close to the Alamo. And he said, well, how close? I said, you literally walk out the door and it's right there.
hmm
There
hmm
it is. You can't forget it. You have to remember it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
did you stay in the Davy Crockett room or something like that?
No, but there was a Davy Crockett room in the hotel. I
Okay.
saw it. Yeah. And a
There.
Sam Houston room. And
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Well, very cool. So
Yeah.
you were down there for the Baptist Communicators
I
Association
was.
meeting? Yeah.
It
So
was
very
great. Had a
excited.
great time. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. I have
Uh-huh.
some good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely a busy week. You wrapped up Easter Sunday, Easter weekend with your family, and then took off to Texas, like so many Baptist communicators did as well. But it was a busy weekend for Southern Baptist churches, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in just a few moments when we get rolling here in the podcast. We're also going to talk about the Committee on Nominations. They have made the announcement for who they'll be bringing to fill out the spots in our trustee boards all across the convention, and so we'll talk to you about that as well. And also a sad note of the passing of a well-loved professor at Southeastern Seminary whose impact into eternity is far-reaching, and so we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a few moments. First, we want to thank the folks at the Israeli Ministry of Tourism. They are our sponsor for SBC this week. One of the richest and most fascinating archaeological excavations ever conducted in Israel is currently unfolding there, and you could go and see it. It's being led by the Israel Antiquities Authority in partnership with the Ministry of Heritage. The dig is being hailed as one of the most important archaeological efforts in recent history. Among the discoveries so far, a mysterious pyramid-shaped structure, an ancient way station, Greek papyrus documents, bronze coins, weapons, 2,200-year-old wooden furniture. I'm not sure they'll let you sit in that, but you can sure take a look at it.
Probably not. Yeah.
Yep. Jewelry, textiles, lots of things there. That dry desert climate in the Middle East has such a well-preserving agent, and it's bringing us closer to the world of Scripture and the people who once lived there in Israel. So you can go yourself to experience that and take your faith to a whole new level, hands-on, or at least eyes-on, those artifacts. And you can learn more at holyland.israel.travel. And we'll be hearing from Court Weldon, who is their faith director for the Israeli Ministry of Tourism. A little later in the podcast, he'll join us. So, Laura, every time I read those promos, it just makes me want to go to Israel.
Yeah. No kidding. I'm like,
Yep.
if they need a report like on site, I'm your girl.
Yep.
Yeah. I'll
Yep.
do it. I'm
Absolutely.
used
So,
to that, desert climate. I was just in San Antonio.
yeah, that's right.
Although
There
it
you go.
wasn't dry and arid, it was very humid the whole time I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you need to go check it out. So.
Yeah.
Speaking of Israel, something pretty significant happened there about 2,000 years ago, and it was a major theme of this past weekend in Southern Baptist churches all across the country, and in churches all across the world, Laura, as we celebrated the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
That's right. A lot of churches seeing record attendance on Easter Sunday. A lot of churches holding baptisms on Easter Sunday. I actually was talking to my neighbor out in the street just last night, walking around my neighborhood, and she said they had 2 baptisms at their sunrise service on Easter Sunday
Oh, wow.
at her church, which is at 6 o'clock in the morning. Pretty
Wow.
cool. Pretty cool. So several of the pastors and convention leaders that Scott Barkley talked with for a story in Baptist Press this week mentioned the possibility that they were beginning to see flames of revival in their area. And so we were, of course, praying for that. Then this next Sunday, which is this has been a few years now in the SBC, that the Sunday after Easter is Baptism Sunday on the SBC emphasis calendar. And it's not a pressure of any kind to try to baptize somebody, but just an opportunity to say, maybe you did have a record attendance or high attendance on Easter Sunday, and maybe there was a renewed interest in the gospel, maybe people hearing it even for the first time. And so
Mm-hmm.
to take advantage of that opportunity and and for people that maybe decided to follow Christ on Easter, this is the chance to go ahead and baptize a lot of those people. And so we'll be following that. We have some stories about kind of leading up to that in BP this
Mm-hmm.
week, and I'm sure we'll have stories early next week
Yeah.
about Baptism Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. We had an interesting first person from Robbie Gallaty this week where he talks about spontaneous baptism. That has been something that has been happening in churches over the last few years, and he talks about sort of how he processed through that and the impact that it's having there at Long Hollow Baptist. So make sure to check that out at Baptist Press.
Yeah, and I liked Tim Dowdy, who's the evangelism vice president there at the North American Mission Board. He said, even if you don't have any baptisms scheduled this Sunday, go ahead and fill the baptistry,
Yeah.
and just as an act of faith, and see what the Lord does. I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah,
It just gets people talking about it. When they
Yeah,
come
right.
into the sanctuary and the baptistry is full, if you've not had one in a while, it just makes people remember the baptistry, kind of remember the Alamo, remember
right.
the baptistry.
I love it. I love it.
There you go. All right. Speaking of Texas, we're headed there, Laura, Lord willing, in just a few weeks, like 45 days away from the SBC
Yikes.
annual meeting. I know. I feel it. We got to keep moving here or my stomach will start turning a little bit.
Yeah.
Lots going on in preparation as we head that way. Lots of excitement as we look toward Southern Baptist Gathering in Dallas for this year's annual meeting. And this week, Laura, we heard from the Committee on Nominations, and they released lots and lots and lots of names of folks who will fill spots on our trustee boards.
Yeah, this is it. This is the big list of these are the people that will be rotating on to all of our entity trustee boards and the executive committee. And a couple years ago, we came out with that organizational chart for the SBC. I think Jonathan maybe did it. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And it was really well done. And I think a lot of people were maybe had never quite seen it put that way before in such a digestible form. And I remember one person commenting, well, it's real complicated. There's a lot of steps, and as if that were a negative. But I thought that's a feature, not a bug. That's a positive that the president appoints a committee on committees, and then that committee appoints the committee on nominations, and then that committee appoints all these boards. And there are a lot of steps, but it's because we're Southern Baptists we want to be a decentralized people. We are not hierarchical. We are not top down. And so there are a lot of steps between that elected official and then the people that actually serve on the boards. It's just in an effort to decrease any opportunity for corruption and it does take kind of a long time to change direction if we wanted to do that. Of course, it's possible. We've seen that happen over the course of our history, but it's kind of hard to do. And that's by design. And so I always, you could think, well, this is just kind of a boring report with a bunch of names on it. But it's actually a lot more than that. This is sort of, this is the proof in the pudding, if you will, of the way that we operate.
Yeah, the process.
So, exactly. And I really like always going through the list, and all the different states and regional conventions are represented. And you always kind of wonder, how did they find that particular person who's a lay person at this church, that I've never heard of? And it's just neat. And I would just encourage people to read the list and look at the people that are in your state, maybe already start praying for that person as they enter this role to try to guide the next few years of whatever entity they might be serving on. And it's encouraging to me to see the wide and broad participation in the SBC.
Yeah, absolutely. So the committee chair is Aaron Kaler, a member of Hayes Hill Baptist Church in Buda, Texas, and the list of 63 folks who are being nominated to serve on SBC entity trustee boards is there at Baptist Press. We'd love for you to go and read that full list, and you probably know some folks there.
Yeah.
And just
if you don't know them personally, you know somebody who knows them probably.
Yep, absolutely. So, all right, a couple of legal things we want to touch on, Laura. First of all, the Department of Justice filed a statement of interest, it's called, in a case based in North Carolina connected to the Summit Church. I think we've talked about this on the podcast. I know we've We've had some stories. Our good friend Chad Austin there at the Biblical Recorder is following along for this and keeps us up to date on it. But the Summit Church ran into some problems when they tried to expand a campus, and a city planning and zoning commission pushed back, and it was a long process, and the church ultimately felt like all that was left for them to do was to take legal action, and it's gotten all the way to the point now where the Department of Justice has gotten involved.
It's funny because Chad Austin, who's been following this story, who's the communications guy there and the editor of the Biblical Recorder there in North Carolina, he was at BCA where I was, and he and I were actually sitting at the same table at one of the breakouts, and he all of a sudden I turned around and he's like walking real quickly out the door, and he's got his backpack on his back, and I was like, oh, I know that walk. He's got a story. And sure enough, he found me later. He's like, sorry to just barge out on you like that, but I had to go cover this. And I'm like, oh, I figured you had something. So this is kind of a big deal that the DOJ is saying. It feels like there might be some religious discrimination going on, which is what the Summit Church has claimed, is that they are not being treated equally with any other type of organization. And so the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division filed the statement in support of the church's claim that the county violated provisions of the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act and RLUIPA, which Baptist Press over the years has written about that act many times in cases kind of like this. So we would be following that for sure. I think that's significant that the Department of Justice is saying, hey, you need to be careful here. This is a religious liberty issue. And so we'll just continue to follow it, or really probably Chad will continue to follow it. And we will continue to run his coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. Another religious liberty case is being argued before the Supreme Court. Actually, it was argued this past week. The school board in Montgomery County, Maryland, was sued by a group of parents who claimed that their religious rights were violated when the county did not give the opportunity for students to opt out of a story time in local school libraries with books that the parents believe promoted LGBTQ agendas such as gay marriage and transgenderism, things like that. And they just asked that their children have the opportunity to be opted out, and the school board said no and denied that. And so that case is being it's debated all the way up to the top now to where the Supreme Court is involved in that, Laura.
Yeah, and it does feel from oral arguments that the Supreme Court is sympathetic to the parents' case, and so we will see what happens. But Brent Leatherwood, ERLC president, said it was clear during the oral arguments the court's conservative wing was highly skeptical of Montgomery County's claim, that's the county that in the school board, that the gender ideology books are mere exposure to different ideas and not coercive instruction that burdens traditional religious beliefs. And so we'll once again continue to follow this case. It's one of the several that we are watching this year, and that ERLC is not only watching but has filed amicus briefs in some of these cases, and so a lot to keep your eye on with the Supreme Court. But this is a big one. This is parental rights nationwide, really, for what giving parents they're not even asking to pick the curriculum. They're just asking to opt out of certain things and to be informed.
Right.
And they are being denied that opportunity. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll keep our eye on it. It's supposed to be a ruling coming in June. All right. Seminary reports. We've heard from a couple this week. We start down in New Orleans, where the Board of Trustees there met, and Jamie Dew shared a very optimistic view, talked about how it's been a sweet time for the seminary, and after a number of years in leadership and stability there, that he believes it's time to turn and to begin to look toward the future.
Yeah, I just thought it was neat to hear from him about this, that he had like a phase one strategy. And he feels like that phase one has come to an end, and he feels like he's beginning phase two of his presidency there at New Orleans. And he said there's been a lot of joy and high morale on the campus recently. And his strategic initiatives for the first 5 years, he actually outlined for messengers back in Indianapolis last year at the annual meeting. So if you were there, or if you watched coverage of that, you may remember what he sort of outlined what he had done in phase one. But now the next phase, he said, is concerned with stewarding the seminary for future generations, continuing to increase enrollment, increase their financial viability. And he said, we want one hand to serve and steward the seminary today, and with the other hand, try to set it up for tomorrow in strength and health. And so that was interesting. They did pass a budget of $25.9 million. So all of that you can read about even more in the VP report that our friend Timothy Cox filed from that trustee meeting.
Yep, definitely. So some staff shift and things like that, all reported there, the details in that Baptist Press story. Speaking of staff, the folks at Southwestern wrote a very flattering story of Adam Groza, focusing on him after 1 year in leadership at Gateway Seminary. Now, that may seem interesting because, wait a minute, Southwestern writing about Gateway. Well, it's because Adam Groza was a student. He was an alum. He is an alum of Gateway Seminary, actually served at Gateway. I'm sorry, he was an alum at Southwestern and actually served at Southwestern before going to Gateway, and was at Gateway about a decade before he became the president there.
Yeah, and time really passes. It's because here we're talking about Jamie Dew having already been at New Orleans Seminary for 5 years, and now Adam Groza already at Gateway for a year. And you just think, I feel like we were just talking about Adam Groza going to Gateway, and it's already been a year. He's approaching his first anniversary, and of course, Gateway is the only seminary in the West, and he is a native of California, moved to Texas as a young person. His father got transferred there, and then when he decided, maybe felt a call to ministry, somebody said, you should go to Southwestern Seminary because he's already there in Texas. He said, I had never heard of Southwestern. I didn't know about Southern Baptist seminaries. He was a Christian, but he just was not in that world at all. And so he said he was grateful for the journey that had brought him to his current moment, and a large part of that was Southwestern and the role that it played in his leadership development and just his memories there. And he said, I had made an early profession of faith, but then when he was 16 is when he felt like he really became born again, and Southwestern really challenged him as to be the Christ follower that he needed to be. So that was just a neat profile of him, and I had forgotten honestly that he was a Southwestern alum, so I enjoyed reading about that.
Yeah, so it's a great story. You got to check it out. Think you'll be encouraged. A lot of interesting details in there about his calling to ministry, processing through that. I was thinking about that this week. Was sitting with a fellow at church on Wednesday night who was trying to process maybe a call on his life and just thinking through that. And then to turn around and read this story about Adam Groza and just think, we all who are called to vocational ministry, like there are some similarities there, no matter where or what the call specifically may be on your life. And so I think you'll be helped by that. All right. Court Weldon from the Ministry of Tourism in Israel is with us, and we're going to talk to him for a few minutes about the value of going to the Holy Land. Well, Court, thanks so much for joining us on SBC this week.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we appreciate you all coming alongside and being a presenting sponsor of SBC this week.
Absolutely. It is our pleasure. We definitely want to get the word out to pastors in the Southern Baptist Convention about tourism to Israel and make sure they're aware that opportunities are available and that it's time to go. It's time to return.
So as we're recording this, we're just a few days after Easter 2025. Yes, what's the tourism season like right now in Israel?
Well, it's really a perfect time to go this time of year. It's beautiful in March and April. So it's typically the time of year that we see people really coming and enjoying their time in Israel. Obviously, over the last year and a half, there has been things that have kept people from going, but we know that right now we're seeing a spike in tourism starting to return, and people are really excited about that. And so we hope to see in the next few months things continue to grow and really see this fall a resurgence of tourism for sure.
Yeah. So you alluded to it right there, and I think that's probably a question that's on a lot of folks' mind. It's just safety. When it comes to travel in the Middle East, and certainly
general,
Israel.
yes.
Absolutely.
Yes,
so talk a little bit about that.
Okay, sure. I mean, it's one of those things too. Obviously, safety is a concern anytime you travel overseas in general. But we do know, given the conflict of the last year and a half, that it's in the news. People see things, but the entirety of protections set up for tourism. There is nothing that you should be worried about as a traveler, as a tourist, as a pastor that's wanting to schedule a group tour for his church. Those are not concerns that I think the tourism board wants you to have, because we've set things up and protocols in place to make sure that you understand your safety is of our highest priority. And we tell people all the time, there's places in the US that you wouldn't go, that you could feel much safer while you're in Israel. Like there's places in Chicago that a lot of people aren't going to go. I live in Atlanta. There's certain places in downtown Atlanta at night that I don't feel safe being. And so when you travel to Israel, you're going to be with a tour guide that knows how to take care of you, knows how to make sure you're avoiding any sort of issues that would come along. And so the safety concern is something we understand it, but we also know that things would not be moving back. Airlines would not be coming back if there was not all of that consideration in place. And so we just encourage pastors, especially, like if you're interested in going before you take your group, go make that trip, see for yourself, see how things are. I'm actually going in a couple of weeks myself. I'm hosting a group of journalists, and we're taking groups consistently, and so we're showing people it's safe, it's time, things are moving forward in a positive light.
Well, talk a bit about you've mentioned groups and pastors taking groups a couple of times. I'm sure most pastors listening and watching this podcast, they probably have pastor friends who have done that, because so many have done that. Yep. But maybe there are those who haven't. And so, what is an entry point? How do you even get that started?
Sure. I mean, one of the fastest ways you can do that is reach out to us. We would happily give you resources. That's actually my role at the Ministry of Tourism on the board. I'm here as a faith-based liaison. My job is to help connect pastors with travel agents and with other ministry partners that they may be looking for different types of experiences in Israel. So I think one of the main things to get started is to find out, does your church want to go? Have an interest meeting. Find out where the waters are with your church, because most likely you're going to have at least 20 or more from your congregation that are like, yes, this is my dream, I want to make this happen. And so when you kind of have those parameters in place of like, this is what we're thinking, this is kind of our timeline, then reaching out to a travel agent is the next place, and we would happily recommend them. I'm sure obviously there are plenty of pastors that in the network that can also offer recommendations and whatnot, but that would be one of the first steps is have an interest meeting, find out how many people from your church want to do it, kind of come up with a timeline, and then work with a travel partner who knows the type of tour you want to take and plan it out together. Those are the fastest way to make that happen.
And so how can someone contact you?
Okay. You can definitely reach out. My email personally, or you can reach out through the Ministry of Tourism. You can find us at holyland.travel. But with me personally, if you want to reach out to me, my email is outreach-atlanta@goisrael.gov.il. And I would happily offer resources, get you connected, because we have offices in regions all over the U.S. We have offices in New York, we have offices in Chicago, L.A., and then ours is in here in Atlanta. So depending on where you are geographically, we have resources available to you, and we can definitely get you connected with the right people.
Okay. So you said you were leading a group of journalists in a few weeks for a yes, tour. What are some things on your list? What are things that when you arrive there in Israel, like these are your top 3 or 4 things that you're just determined to make sure those folks see?
Well, because it's a group of Christian journalists with American Family Radio, we for sure want to do Footsteps of Jesus for these guys. We want to make sure we're going to the Galilee area. We want to make sure, you're hitting Capernaum, which is the home of the disciples. That's a big part of where their base would have been in that region. But also Jerusalem. There's so much history and life and biblical archaeology that is there to discover. So those are two of the main places we want to make sure that they're able to go. But also we try to encourage people to get some of the local flavor. Like, go pick a restaurant in Jerusalem, go pick a restaurant in the Galilee, go pick a restaurant somewhere in Tel Aviv, and just immerse yourself in the culture and kind of get a feel for modern Israel and the people, because there's so much interaction you can have on a trip like that. Yes, you want to come for your spiritual enlightenment. You want to open the Bible and see things that you've only read about, but also, like, take the time. We encourage you to take the time to make a new friend. You just really never know where that conversation's going to go.
Yeah, and the folks that I know who have been to Israel, the people of Israel, the shop owners, I mean, people on the street, I mean, the folks are very friendly, and they
Absolutely.
The tourists are not in their way, that they're actually happy to see the visitors.
Oh, for sure. It's one of those mood elevator things too, I think, because I was in Israel. The last time I was there was March, April of last year. And it was in the midst of, there wasn't a lot of tourism happening. And I just really wanted to go to see some friends of mine, and also, like, be able to tell people what it was like on the ground at that time. And it was really funny. Everywhere I went, people would stop me and they're like, "You're an American, you're here." So it is one of those things where they do get really excited to see people come and see their beautiful country and immerse themselves in the culture, for sure.
Yeah, very good. Well, just another moment here. Anything else that you'd want to pass along to folks?
I think the main thing for me that I always tell pastors: go now. Don't wait until the end of your ministry to make that trip. It is a transformative journey. When you go and you specifically choose to open Scripture and look at the land that you've read about your entire life, you dedicated your entire life to Scripture. Please go get context, because it will change the way you read Scripture. It will change the way you interact with your congregation. So those are the things I always try to encourage pastors. Don't wait on that. If you have the opportunity, please try to take it earlier in your career, earlier in your life. Take your family, take your friends if you can, because it does. I've seen it firsthand. My parents are pastors of a church. I went in my 20s for the first time, and it really changed the trajectory of my life and how I read Scripture and how I interacted with the Bible. But it is something that I just really encourage everybody. Like, don't wait. I know it's a bucket list item, but if you can make it happen earlier, please, we encourage you to make it happen earlier.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for spending a few minutes with us.
Absolutely. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for that interview. Thank you, Court, for joining us. That was really interesting. And every time I hear conversations like that, it makes me, again, want to go see for myself. Maybe I will one day. I hope so.
Yep, that's right. So, well, we mentioned earlier about some sadness, some sorrow at Southeastern Seminary, and we wanted to come to that now and just spend a few minutes this week. Dr. Keith Harper went to be with the Lord. You might remember he had retired back in the fall with cancer, and it was just an aggressive form of cancer, and he passed this week. And so, Lord, we wanted to just give thanks to the Lord and to grieve with those who grieve, and to celebrate the legacy that he leaves.
Yeah, he. If you don't know him, you would maybe know his books and his impact. He, of course, co-wrote the SBC FAQs book with former SBC This Week co-host Amy Whitfield. And she had some sweet memories on social media over the past couple of days just about her time with him and his mentorship of her. And, of course, lots of people did. You saw a lot of commentary of people just talking about the impact that he had made on their lives, but also just on Southern Baptists as a whole, because he was really the one that I think highlighted the letters of Lottie Moon and Annie Armstrong both, and compiled those into books kind of for a new generation. These letters that had motivated those older generations of Southern Baptists maybe 100 years ago to support missions and church planting both here and around the world. And he just didn't want those to get lost, he thought. And so he compiled them into these books that renewed the call, if you will, of that those letters had made, and really inspired a whole new generation of Southern Baptists to get involved in missions and to support missions. Danny Aiken, Southeastern president, said, of course, he was there for almost 30 years. He was at Southeastern, Dr. Harper was, and he said he was a loved and valued member of the seminary for 3 decades, a consummate scholar, teacher, and churchman is what he called them. And he said his last conversation with him, I love this, was debating whether we would study church and Baptist history in heaven. And Danny Aiken thinks we will. Keith Harper said he wasn't real sure, but I guess now he knows. Danny Aiken said now he knows.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe he definitely has access to some first-person sources. That's for sure.
True. Yeah, yeah. Do you even have archives in heaven? Because you just already know everything.
Yeah, you just find them. That's right.
Yeah, right. Just go talk to the source.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're thankful for him. Thank you for sharing that, Laura. And again, we're praying for all those who have been affected by his passing this week and in the days and weeks ahead. A few things we want to share with you on our SBC emphasis calendar. First of all, Thursday, May the 1st is the National Day of Prayer. You can find some resources from the SBC at sbcnet.net/prayer. There's a guide there if you'd like to use that in your church for the National Day of Prayer. May the 4th is Seminary Sunday, and so look forward to marking that day. And May the 18th, Laura, is Children's Ministry Sunday. I just can't help but think children's ministry folks first. On May the 18th, they're breathing a sigh of relief that the school year is almost over, but that means Vacation Bible School is right around the corner, so we can't unplug just yet. So
yeah, that's a fun day. That's a really cool idea. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. How about that history moment?
Okay, well, it goes really well with the story at the very top of the podcast about all the baptisms on Sunday. This date line is April 24th, 1950. So 75 years ago. Headline, Evangelistic Crusade adds thousands to SBC churches. The largest baptismal service ever engaged in by Baptists was held Sunday afternoon, April 23rd, according to Dr. C.E. Matthews, Secretary of the Department of Evangelism of the Southern Baptist Home Mission Board. So this is Tim Dowdy's counterpart from 75 years ago, this guy, C.E. Matthews. The occasion was, for many Southern Baptist churches, the closing service of 2 weeks of intensive revival effort. More than 6,000 Baptist churches west of the Mississippi River participated in the simultaneous crusade, and thousands of new believers were baptized. The 1950 Western Evangelistic Crusade had more than 2 million Baptists participating. Dr. Matthews was leader of the movement, and many of the visiting preachers were from churches east of the Mississippi. And then it kind of goes through just a little bit of the results of this crusade, which was sort of maybe the first baptism Sunday, if you will. Like these people were coordinated in this effort of all these churches doing this all at the same time. And it's funny because it lists telegrams that were received at various dates. I guess at the Home Mission Board, these churches would send dispatches via telegram about what was going on in their church, and I loved that. And so here's a dispatch from Alexandria, Louisiana. 8 churches reporting 75 new memberships by letter, 79 by baptisms, 8 Negro churches participating. A dispatch from Little Rock, Arkansas, 54 churches in Pulaski County, simultaneous revival campaign, 573 additions by baptism, 264 additions by letter. And then it just goes on. There's a dispatch from Oklahoma City, Jefferson City, Missouri, Long Beach, California, Dallas, Texas, and it's just all of the baptisms that were happening all over the West. And some churches, I loved this. You'll love this because we did this a few months ago on the podcast. We talked about this. Throughout this entire Southern Baptist Convention territory, Baptists assembled at 2:30 Central Time, April 23rd, and participated in the evangelistic broadcast of the Southern Baptist Hour. On the radio.
There you go.
So they listened to the radio together. Congregations sang with the Baptist Hour Choir and listened to the message of Dr. Duke McCall, Executive Secretary of the SBC Executive Committee.
Absolutely. That's great.
Isn't that great?
That's really cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so, we were coordinating together and and building a movement for baptisms 75 years ago, and here we're doing it again this week.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that. So on Monday, when Scott was putting that story together, he emailed me or texted in the afternoon, and one of the things he said is it's just taken some time to get all these stats together. So exactly what you're talking about, those lists, compiling those lists.
He needed some telegrams.
Right. He reached out all over the country to different folks, and he was compiling the list just like you were talking about there. So very cool.
Yeah,
very cool. Yeah. Well, listen, share some highlights with us. I think this week you learned that a number of the Baptist Communicator folks listen to us, and so tell Southern Baptist what that is, first of all, those who may not know.
Yeah, Baptist Communicators Association. It's been around a long time, and it's a kind of a trade association, if you will, for those of us that in Baptist communications. And it's everybody from writers to designers to marketing people to photographers, videographers. It's everybody who's just trying to tell the story of what God is doing among Southern Baptists around the world. And so there were dozens of people at this conference in San Antonio this week, and I heard some great keynote speakers, of course, some presenters, and a lot of whom are just at the top of their field, creatives, professionals, and those platform people are always great and inspiring. But what impresses me more than that even is the other attendees that are there. Each one of these people are just as sharp as can be, kind, professional, and passionate about telling the story, telling God's story, and helping people hear the story, and in all kinds of ways. And they're so creative, many of them, and how they get the story out. And they're also just cool people. They're the kind of people you just want to walk along the river walk with and go get some ice cream, which you may have done a time or two. So just great people. A couple of highlights for me. So I've been at BP a long time, 22 years in September. And there are a lot of people that have been in this game longer than me, as long as me or even longer than me. And one of those people, a lot of them I've met many times, like Margaret Colson in Florida, who's the woman who puts this, who's like the executive director of BCA, and we couldn't do it without her. Jim Veneman, our great photo editor, who's at our annual meeting every year, who's been doing that for 40 years, is a very dear friend of mine. And people like that I really get to see regularly. But there are some that I've known all 22 years, and I have never actually laid my eyes on them. Because we've always just emailed or talked on the phone. And that one of those was Cameron Crabtree, who is the communications director at the Northwest Baptist Convention. So I was standing in line Monday night, waiting to get on a riverboat to go down the river walk in San Antonio. And I was standing right next to this guy that I didn't know, and somebody called him Cameron. And I said, "Are you Cameron Crabtree?" And he said, "Yeah." And then he realized who I was. And I was like, "Can I hug your neck?" And he goes, "Absolutely." So we just had a moment of, I can't believe we actually are seeing each other's faces, because we have talked so many times over years and years, but we had never met each other. I didn't even know what he looked like. And so we got to spend a little bit of time together, not only Monday night, but throughout the week, and just get to know each other more and do a little shop talk. And I can just look around the room, and that there's just example after example of people who have really saved my life a lot of days, because I need content. I need to tell a story, and these people are sending me their content and sending me their story, and they're just all so good and so professional. And Southern Baptists should be so thankful. I mean, these people are just the best of the best, but yet they choose to use their talents and their efforts to serve Southern Baptists and to serve the Lord. And that's a blessing. And they could probably be making more money and getting more attention in other places, but they do this because they love it. And so another kind of funny moment, you may remember back in the fall, we had some really fantastic hurricane photo coverage after Hurricane Helene in Florida. And I even think I said on the podcast, like, these photos are unbelievable. And I made galleries, and I encouraged people to go look at the photos. Well, that photographer, I put it together. He was at BCA this week, and I had seen him before, but I didn't know that that's who he was. It was like I had seen his work, and I just I kind of connected all the dots in my head. And I said, oh my gosh, I know who you are. And I just complimented him on his photos and just how great how much I appreciated his work and stuff. And then a few minutes later, he comes up to me and he says, wait a minute, I know who you are. He said, you host SBC This Week. I said, yeah. And he said, well, I listened to the podcast. He's a missionary in Ghana. He just happens to be stateside for the past year or so. And he said, I listened to SBC This Week in Ghana. And so it was like we were sort of mutual admirers of each other's work, or appreciators, I should say,
Wow.
and had never met, but sort of connected the dots right there together. Like, well, oh my gosh, I love your work. And then he said, well, I know what you do. And I listen to the podcast and I keep up with what's going on in the SBC, like when I'm all the way in Ghana. And so it's just fun. It's fun to make those connections. And I loved, we actually won an award, SBC This Week won a BCA award. So I was really proud of that. And, we couldn't do this podcast if not for all these people, you know, like we wouldn't have a story to tell if all these people weren't telling the story, and we were using their content. And so there's just so many worthwhile, helpful things that you could be listening to on there's so many podcasts and so many books you could be listening to or whatever. But what we're doing is kind of a recent phenomenon, being able to make a broadcast, and anybody from anywhere in the world can download it and listen to it or stream it, even in Ghana or whatever. And that's kind of a recent thing. And I think sometimes we can even take it for granted what an almost miraculous thing that is. And there are a lot of things you could be listening to, but we appreciate that you choose to spend a few minutes with us every week, whether you're in Ghana or San Antonio or wherever you are, to just find out what's going on in the SBC. And it's largely due to the people that I got to spend this week with who are helping us tell that story. And so we just appreciate it. We appreciate you for what you do. Always let us know if there's news that we need to be talking about, news that we need to know about. And we just couldn't do it without you, the listener, and without these communicators that are doing just a fantastic job telling that story wherever they are. Yeah. And so, like always, there's all kinds of news that we didn't have time to talk about today. But we talked about some really important stuff. And so we just thank you for that, and we thank you for listening.